Imagine forests hundreds of years ago, in which trees grew large and were evenly spread out. Wildfire was a part of the natural landscape. When vegetation started getting thick, a lightning-started fire would come through and burn up the understory, leaving the forests clean and healthy. Now fast forward to the 1900s, when little was known about fire's role in forest ecosystems, and the Forest Service was established. One of their management strategies was to suppress fires in order to protect harvestable timber. In fact, a fire incident known as the Big Blowup in 1910 jump-started the policy of full fire suppression with two main goals: preventing fires and suppressing fires as soon as possible. After years of fire suppression, paired with warmer weather, drier fields have accumulated in forests. Such buildup not only causes forest health issues, but also poses a risk of catastrophic wildfires to landowners living in the wildland-urban interface.
The overarching project is called the Chiloquin Community Forest and Fire Project, and it's approximately 185,000 acres, and that includes private and Forest Service land around the Chiloquin area.
And so the Chiloquin project it was the second project, actually the third project that we started with the Klamath Lake Forest Health Partnership. The publication outlines the process, the 8-step process that was used on North Warner, the identification of the landscapes, outreach to the landowners, finding funding sources. And so we applied that same 8-step process to the Chiloquin project.
One of the key parts of what we're trying to do here is a landscape restoration project. So the first step in that was working with the Forest Service and identifying the lands that they were going to be treating on a large scale, and then prioritizing those with where private lands needed to be treated on a large scale. And in the Chiloquin area, it has been identified as one of the greatest wildfire risks for Klamath County. And there is a high population. Just in our project area alone, we have 2,800 landowners. And so this is the most important area for us in Klamath County, which is why we chose to start here.
Main goal is similar to Gerber and North Warner. Landscape treatments of 100,000 acres in scale on the ground for fuels reduction, forest health, wildlife, focus on water, social, producing revenue, and social to relationships in those communities, to go in there and provide on the ground service, forest technical services.
We saw some flyers and picked up some information from some other people, and we started to go to meetings, and this led to this project out here, and so that's basically how we got started.
We try to educate ourselves as much as possible. So when we see a seminar or a meeting that has to do with forest health, fire safety, whatever, we're always intensely interested if it's our area. And even if it isn't, but if it's our area. And that this project looked like it was zeroing in our area, and we knew there was a lot of things that needed to be done that we couldn't afford or manage on our own.
Lots of partners: Klamath Watershed Partnership, Fremont Wenema, Oregon Department of Forestry, OSU Extension, different funding sources. Klamath Watershed Partnership got over $500,000 grant that's currently underway on the ground right now in the Copperfield Draw area, doing timber thinning, fuels reduction for fire risk mitigation, forest health, mule deer habitat, and water. And then we have a Western State Manager fire grant that our ODF fuels crew is currently involved doing fuels mitigation around houses. And then we also have a community assistance Klamath County-wide grant that's assisting in that area a little bit too. And ODF is working in this area actually on several different fronts. We have a 13-person fuels crew right now, and they're working on Western States doing immediate around structures, fuels risk reduction, forest thinning, chipping, piling. Leanne Bradenberg is the project manager for that project, and she hired Daryl Jacobs Logging to be the contractor in that area. And so he has He just acquired a masticator or slash buster head for Timco. And so he'll be slash busting over 300 acres of bitter brush adjacent to Forest Service ground on private land. And then they're just finishing up. They've logged almost 400 acres of timber thinning for fire risk reduction. There's a commercial component, commercial timber, biomass is removed, and then some piles will be burned as well.
Our role is to do it's a cut, skid, and deck on the thinning, and we are taking out some of the mulch logs, but not very many. The more defected mulch to come out, and we're basically, it's a forest health on private land, and just more of a cleanup fire prevention project.
Some of the laws and policies that that we follow, definitely on federal lands, we follow the NEPA process and all the policies and procedures of that. But even on private land, the Oregon Forest Practices Act requires reforestation, adherence to rules, protection of streams, wildlife, soils, the operation. There's policies and procedures, best management practices in Oregon, along with forest management. Other rules, policies, the operator has to adhere to not only insurance, there's OROSHA for his employees, but then just fire risk reduction for the Oregon Department of Forestry, fire laws when we're in fire season, they have to have required equipment, protection for the landowner.
Yeah, just all your normal your policies that the state has through your creeks and your drainages and everything like that. But yeah, you follow all the normal logging practice rules and regulations. And on like a lot of these little private pieces like that, you got fences, and so we take the fence down, have to put fences up, and I mean it's just driveways and everything like that we're dealing with.
Another part of the project is using ArcGIS and map making to make scientific-based decisions.
And then we have a good database of, not only cultural resource, but wildlife, values at risk, watersheds, and stuff like that. And so we have done analysis and priority and overlay and GIS exercises to map those out. And that inventory that was done too, funded with OSU, and then the structure risk assessment, all those information overlays and stuff really help, I guess, the science behind it.
Yeah.
To tell us where to go, what the priorities are, and then the operational side too.
Some of the uncertainties of this project have been, related to the outreach and being able to engage landowners and conveying the need. And I think we have done that through a couple of years of outreach. And, unfortunately, thanks to large wildfires in other areas, people are a lot more aware of the risk, and they're a lot more willing to do work.
Yeah, I think the economic risk, we don't know. A lot of the NRCS rates, OWEB rates and stuff, they're cost share rates, where the landowner actually shares a little bit of the burden, the financial burden in that. And so the uncertainty is if the markets are there, the commercial value are there, grant funding is there. We don't know. Without the money, we can't do the work. And we have to be fair. Oftentimes the operator's the most important. They're the ones that we need them to be successful, so that we can have them work on the next project. So the funding part is really the hard part, and the uncertainty and the balance. There's uncertainty with the landowners too. A lot of times they don't know what they want or why. And so they might not be a good fit for the project. Even though their landscape is ready and has a critical need, they might not want anybody on their land to do the work. And so that's an uncertain part of it too. Right. Quite a few issues. Everything from markets, we've struggled. The timber market is really low right now, nationally, especially in the West Coast. We were concerned we wouldn't even have a commercial component, and the landowners aren't making any money hardly. Okay. The timber market is way down. Chip market's way down. We were worried we would just be able to just cut the trees and then deck them and then just have to burn them, whole trees and everything. But the operator was able to find markets for us, make it feasible. And so it's been nip and tuck on that.
The log price is so terrible right now. If the log prices was better, we could take out a few more merch trees, but the price is so bad right now. It's not. It's too cheap for the landowners.
The problem in these areas around Chiloquin is that fire has been kept off of the landscape for the last 100 years, and so the forests are overstocked. They're unhealthy, which puts them at a greater risk for disease and beetle infestation and things like that. And so when you have those types of forests and they're in the wildland urban interface, which we have out here in Chiloquin with all of the private landowners, there's a lot of life and property at risk.
I think the top of the list was fire safety.
Yes.
Because we're at the end of the road and we're 7 miles from the pavement, the way you came in, we get a lot of people out here, and there's a lot of hunters, and we've put out quite a few campfires, etc., over the years. And we know that our place was not anywhere near fire safe out on the edges of the property. We've worked here around our house to make it that way, but it's just such a huge undertaking for just 2 people. So the fire safety, and then as a bonus, the forest health. We had professionals that were going to come in and do what needed to be done to ensure that our forest would be as healthy as it could be.
Yes, forest health and fire safety. That was our main concern.
We do have a little bit of bark beetle infestation in the lodgepole, mountain pine beetle, but then primarily a lot of the issues were actually porcupine damage from the 60s and 70s. There's a lot of defect in the trees that could turn the saw logs into just chipwood.
Okay.
So porcupine and squirrels, actually mechanical damage from them over decades is prevalent. In the cooler, wetter sites, western gall rust actually affects the trees, and so a lot of the lodgepole has galls into it and reduces the value of the trees. There's there's no root rot really that we've found. Dwarf mistletoe is prevalent in the ponderosa pine, and so we've been really reducing that back because it's a huge contributor to wildfires. So other issues, landowners aren't educated necessarily in forest health, fire risk mitigation. You know, they're in the forest for the trees, but they also don't realize, you know, what a healthy forest looks like necessarily. And so each landowner has been a lot of effort, a lot of work to educate, work with, and sometimes our prescriptions aren't necessarily the way we think they should be, but we adjust those for the landowner and compromise a little bit.
They were very professional and outstanding. We interacted with them, and they told us exactly what they wanted to do. Did we want to change anything? We did a few changes, nothing serious. Had no problem with at all with what they did.
Right. They came in before they ever started and sat down right here at this table, had coffee, and laid out what they were going to do, when they were going to do it, and how and where, and said, now, what are your thoughts on this? And they listened to what we said. They were going to do 2 or 3 huge slash piles. We asked them please not to. They wanted to know where we wanted the slash piles. Well, that's important. We didn't want one right here in front of the gate, and they did that for us. They wanted to know if there were any areas that they shouldn't trespass, and we told them please, because we hay our meadow and we didn't want it to be damaged in any way. And they said, well, we probably will need to cross the meadow, and so we laid out a lane for them, marked it with tape, and that's where they crossed, and they did not ever move anywhere outside of that lane. So we only have one lane that we have to go back and harrow and make better, and it was our decision where to do it. And they made a lot of adjustments in how to get their equipment in and so on, just to satisfy our desire for the meadow to remain intact. They gave us marking tape so that we could surround. They thought the juniper should go because it's a weed tree and all that. But we kind of like the mixed look. And so we just took this tape and wrapped a few of them, and they left them. And to me, that's working with the landowner to make sure they're happy. When they drive away, the landowners are happy. When this project is done, the people that were involved in it are happy. And that's the best outcome you can hope for in a project.
So there we have it. Everything is working just fine.
It's a good project that they're doing if you own private ground and want it cleaned up, that's the only way you'll ever get it done because it's cost prohibitive to do it yourself.